Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. This time, quality of life. Quality of life. It's all been trekked before. Speaking of quality, improve our quality of life, your quality of life, your quality of listenership, quality of podcasting. Support us at patreon.com/IABD. It don't take much. It don't take much. Less than a cup of coffee per week, probably. Something like that. Yeah, but it's very easy to get in on the bonus stuff. See our mugs, get the bonus content, hear us go off on things that have nothing to do with Star Trek. If that's your cup of tea, if that's the quality of life you want, go do that. This is the quality of life we want. Quality of life, it's all been trekked before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
I'm Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. We're here to talk the quality of life. What's your first impressions?
I don't think life is really all that great right now.
Oh, that's a shame. I'm sorry to hear that.
There's only so much you can do in this country, can you? No, all right. This is one I didn't.
Sounds like you need another gun, Keith. That's what I'm hearing.
That would solve things. I'd like to think I would be a good guy with a gun.
Yeah, but how many good guys with a gun have actually saved lives? No school shootings stopped by good guys with a gun. They just wait outside for an hour.
I could be the first. I could be a trailblazer.
You could.
Like a pioneer back then, a cowboy. I'm sorry.
First impressions of the quality of life.
Yes. I didn't remember this one. I wasn't sure how I was gonna feel about it. Poker. It's always a good start, right?
Yes.
So you're gonna do some character building, probably in some way.
I got so many notes on the poker scene. We'll get to
that. And a Geordie science scene, that's what it seemed like it was going to be. And then a couple of different swerves, and then I think I was satisfied with where it ended up going. I think they did something interesting. They made a interesting or a difficult moral quandary come up eventually, and I recognized the character, sort of, but we'll get to that.
Good.
Yeah, I ended up liking it. I thought it was going to follow along some AI tropes that we've seen before. Because first I wrote down, it's going to turn evil, and I was like, it's not evil. And then we got into the sentient thing, which we had before, but that created the avenue with Data feeling so tied to it. And so I thought that was cool. I thought the fact that it was about science. I've got a ton of notes about the exocomp because or at least what I think it's based on. I think it's based on something that we have already. Not something we have already, but something similar to what we have already.
In real life, you mean, or? Yeah,
and I'll get into that after we get done with playing poker. But yeah, I ended up enjoying it.
Yeah, that was slightly uneven, but overall, I enjoyed it. I saw the twist coming from a mile away of what was happening because I felt like they telegraphed it really heavily. And also, having seen the exocomp in Lower Decks, I don't believe I'd seen this episode. And if I read about this episode, I don't remember anything about this episode, or I read about it and had no idea what the exocomp looked like. So I wouldn't have made those connections. But yeah, of course, in my head, the Lower Decks was first and foremost. And I enjoy very much, not to jump to the end or anything, but how the learning that the exocomps like go out of their way to preserve their own life. The exocomp in Lower Decks definitely was like going out of her way to preserve her life.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I really like the way they all tie together.
I forgot. I see. It took me a while to think. I was like, why does that thing look so familiar? And then I was like, I got there eventually. Lower Decks. So I was like, this is amazing. And that can, oh my God, that's brilliant. I kept waiting
for it to talk in this episode. I was disappointed it never spoke. But I enjoyed the Data story of the week, even if the rest of the episode was a little bit. I do wonder if I would feel this episode was more middling without the Lower Decks context. But I liked it, partly because it looks just like the one in Lower Decks.
Yeah,
and I thought the effects were great for the time. So we start.
They had to carry it around a lot, but I think it's probably a good trade-off.
Well, you could definitely see that it was hanging from wires from the way it moved. But,
I didn't notice that,
but that's fine. Like, and I definitely saw when the first time you see the exocomp, it's like half in a tunnel, and then the way it up and moves back, you're like, somebody just lifted it and pulled it back.
What I would ask first, you mentioned seeing the twist being telegraphed. I mean, like, which aspect? I felt like there were multiple turns happening.
That it was sentient, but it could think for itself. Because just the way we first saw it and the way it behaved immediately, like you're like, oh no, it's behaving. It's not just a machine following orders. It has behavior and attitude.
On my favorite Tumblr, my favorite TNG Tumblr, Fashion It So, for this episode, they mentioned about the droids, or not the droid, no, wrong podcast. They mentioned about the exocomps that they love that they had feet, even though they didn't walk. They love it.
No, that was fun. Yeah. I enjoyed, this is my only fashion note.
Fashion.
I enjoyed the replicating tool, that you could replicate whatever tool you need. And of course, that opens up all kinds of possibilities. You know what tool that certain engineers use. I'm talking about a
hypospanner?
No. Talking about something you get the lion's den, Keith. No, something you get the lion's den.
A whip? A chair? I don't know.
No, we should start with the poker game because that is the whole thing felt a little bit forced and contrived, and I was disappointed though we didn't get resolution on it. The whole thing about the beard, and they all talking about the beards, and Beverly like, oh, beards are suspicious, and all the guys like, no, it's courage and strength, and Beverly's like, oh no, that's just sexism, it's an affectation. And then they're like, well, what about makeup? And I really wanted to see either her dye her hair, or I figured that where they were going is Geordi will be clean shaven again, I'm sure, next week. Right. So I thought this was their way of getting him back to that because, he just grew up for his wedding. But I will say nobody on the original series ever had a beard. And now all 3 next-gen guys in the room have a beard.
I thought it was just them having some fun with the backstage context of things. It did feel a little stilted, especially if you weren't in on the joke, which I would not have been back then, certainly. Further apart, Beverly is the one who brought up makeup and kind of did a couple of nudges and winks to. They came pretty close to talking about some patriarchal attitudes, which hadn't really occurred to me about it, like the idea that the beard represents the fact that they are not feminine, essentially. We are not women. We have beards. That's the power, something like that.
I like there were 2 states, at least in my way of thinking, for everyone. And then I thought they were all cowards for running out on the game. But I mean, I know they had to get to the bridge or whatever. But so in that kind of space travel, probably like any kind of travel, I would imagine they're like, we're going to get here at 0800 hours. But sometimes you might get there like 0750, and it might have been like, well, let's just play until we get to the particle fountain. Is that particle fountain?
Yeah.
So, but because part of me was like, well, wouldn't they know this coming? But then I thought, well, they probably did, but they probably like, well, let's just keep playing until then.
So they need this. Yeah. Picard's going to analyze the situation first before he calls him up.
Oh, also, I think this scene has the Geordi meme, the Geordi / Drake meme of don't want it. I'm giving the hand. No, don't want it. And then the point of like, yeah, I'll take that.
I've seen that meme 1,000 times, but I missed the part of the episode.
Of course, because I forget he has a beard in the meme. That would explain.
Yeah, I immediately was like, yep, that's what that is.
Yeah. Interesting.
Like an exocomp, my brain is sometimes. Speaking of hair and makeup, as Crusher, we mentioned with Crusher, I thought I'm jumping to Dr. Farallon, Farallon. I didn't love her hair. Fashion It So says she is on her way to either a production of Seussical or a 1941 party, which I think is right on the money. And then I thought the makeup was really, and she says the thing that we've talked about a lot. It's like, okay, you got some ridges on your face, but you're still humanoid more or less, which is what she is. And they say they were like, well, she's just.
Oh, you were talking about the guest star. I thought you were talking about Beverly at first.
No, sorry, wrong doctor. Yeah, Dr. Farrell. And I agree. In fact, in the first scene, I just felt like even her nose ridge just looked like they drew some lines on.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't even look molded, and then a little later it looked more molded, but not the best work in that sense.
Well, she was played by Ellen Bry, who's best known for St. Elsewhere, where she played Nurse Shirley Daniels, as well as the films Deep Impact and Mission Impossible 3. She's got 53 credits, a lot of guest spots. Doesn't look like she's been active in about 10 years, but as far as I can see, she's still among us. She's about 71 these days.
I recognized the name and the face, and I thought, oh, she's been in a ton of stuff. But I was surprised it was only. I mean, she was on St. Elsewhere for 3 seasons. But,
this is her only Trek credit. No Seinfeld. I think we've passed the era where they're sharing Seinfeld guest stars.
You're right.
It's been a long time. So,
So was Seinfeld still in the air at this point? I mean, I guess they would have been, right?
98. So.
Oh wow, yeah. It suggests that there was probably some sort of inside connection that dried up or moved on or something. It's funny how I feel like I had to have mentioned this before, but when you see these groups of shows where you have actors sort of like carrying each other over to different places and little cliques, and you're like, oh yeah, didn't realize until I was older what that must have meant. That that's just how it works, isn't it?
Yes.
In the industry, you go, hey, I got this friend who can do this. Okay, just go over and do it. Yeah.
They're on the studio lot next door, so just send them over when they're done over there.
Yeah.
They're talking about Data's programming, and he mentions that he's been giving himself upgrades. He's like, oh yeah, I changed this so this doesn't do this anymore. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. I guess it's kind of like when we try to better ourselves by taking up a new hobby or losing weight or whatever. Data rewires his circuit.
That makes sense, yeah.
This might be a good time for me to prompt Jimmy to give us the bit about the writer of the episode, because now I'm curious. Because this, whenever you have like these kinds of things that just casually throwing into the canon, oh yeah, Data just does this thing. It feels like somebody would have to have some weight to pull something like that off. Right?
So this was written by Niran Shakar, who was an executive producer on Next Gen for a lot, story editor and producer. Or not executive producer on Next Gen, sorry, he was a story editor on Next Gen. And he wrote a bunch of episodes like First Duty, Face of the Enemy, Suspicions. This is his second writing credit. So he had just started, he'll be there for a while. He wrote an episode of Voyager, he wrote a couple episodes of Deep Space Nine. He was credited as a scriptwriter on the Star Trek Generations video game. And he writes The Expanse these days. But there's a character name for him on Deep Space Nine. So he was clearly pretty well known and liked among the staff, though it does say it's based on a material from L.J. Scott, and this is L.J. Scott's only IMDb credit. So at this point, they were taking fan submissions. I wonder if this was one of those fan submissions that came in, and then Niran Shakar just like rewrote it, or Shankar.
I didn't know that there was ever a point where they did that, but
they did.
That's This was impressive, in my opinion. Whether or not I think Stephen probably was going to mention something like this too. The pseudoscience of what they were talking about. Mm-hmm. I mean, it felt pretty convincing to me. I mean, they didn't really shy away either, because they did that thing where, okay, we're going to walk and talk out of the hallway, and this is where most people would just kind of like gobble. I'll throw a couple words and we're just going to fade out, so we don't have to try anything. But they were just like, they were sticking with it for sentence after sentence. Like, wow, all right.
Memory Alpha gives us no additional information on L.J. Scott other than that the original title of this episode was The Underground Circuit. Which I guess is kind of a little clever pun, but not clever enough to keep. Yeah, it's a stretch. It's a stretch.
I don't know how I feel about that, but yeah, it's just.
I will say the actual title made me think that, and this was just me misunderstanding what was going on. I thought if the exocomp tried to kill itself, so I thought it came out and was like, "I'm too damaged. I'm going to destroy myself. I can't do anybody any good." That's because I thought they said it had rewired itself to not come back on, but that's not what they said. They said it fixed itself later. So, but briefly, I was like, "Oh wait, the Orville just did that." But they did. They did not. I mean, they did that, but they didn't do what.
We'll get to the Orville in about 10 years or so. But whoa, that season premiere. Anyway, so Beverly has a scene that has nothing to do with the rest of the episode at first, where, I mean, until the scene transitions, but it's like she has been practicing her battle with Worf and got a big slice on her arm. And I love that so much that first of all, we fill in a little bit of the personal lives and hobbies of the crew. Second of all, that Beverly is doing combat training with a Klingon. I knew she was tough, but this just proves it. And third of all, she got like a major sliced injury and she's just totally casual about it because she's that hardcore. I loved everything about that scene.
Are we sure it was a slice or like a bruise or something?
It was a slice. It wasn't bleeding anymore by the time we saw it, but there was a clear slice.
Fashion So mentioned that about these outfits, and we saw them a little while ago, but they noticed that rather than have a black belt or a yellow belt or whatever, it was on they thought it was the bottom of the pant cuff. Worf's was red and Beverly's was white.
Oh, wow.
So they thought that might be the designation. They thought that was cool. They thought it was too complicated. In real life, it'd just be like, I got to buy new pants every time I go move up. But they said maybe it's an attachment or something like a belt. But I thought that was an interesting concept. But yeah, that was
that's a great catch.
This isn't a Crusher episode, but it feels like it was a Crusher episode. I thought these are some of her. I really enjoyed her in this episode.
Yeah, the scene where she's talking to her transitions to a scene where Data comes in and asks her the definition of life. Mm-hmm. And that conversation was really interesting too. We get some of Beverly's opinion on it. And I like the idea that scientists and philosophers have been trying to figure this out for centuries, but they still don't know, because we don't know now, and we won't figure it out in the next 400 years. Although, if you remember, if you remember the Republican Party in 2022, life is defined as from conception until birth, and then they have no rights unless they're a white male with a gun, right?
Accurate.
Yeah. If you're there's no conservatives still listening to this podcast. It's fine.
No, it's not. No. I'm not offended on their behalf. I'm just more like, I'm still thinking about the actual scientific concept of it too, which is that I still think is interesting. And it encompasses more than just like a human soul necessarily. It's like the definition of not even necessarily sentience, although for something like a mechanical, an artificial life form in that sense, something would be able to understand instructions. It would almost have to be sentience.
Yeah. Yeah. This is where the episode gets a little bit odd, and in my opinion, where the unevenness comes in. Data just goes to Dr. Fowler and tells her to stop using the exos. Not talking to Picard first, and then Picard has to call a meeting of all of them in there. And I just can't believe Data just bypasses the command structure and gives his own orders without having that discussion first, knowing that she's going to object and there will be a discussion.
I don't know. I see your point, but at the same time, let's say that you thought that someone's life was in danger. It would be the same sort of urgency of, I need to go directly to this before I need to head this off before anything else happens, and make sure that she is aware that this is going to, it's like, stop the presses, and then we'll talk to the editor. Then you can say, no, keep him going,
That would make sense if Data acted like there was any urgency to it. Like
it's not emotion. He doesn't have emotions.
So. I know. That's true. That's a good point. It just felt odd to me that he didn't loop Picard in.
I was surprised both times, but as Picard said, it's the most human decision he's ever made.
Yeah.
Well, and again, is that a compliment?
I think it is for Data, because Data wants to be human, unlike Spock, who does not. So it's a compliment here, unlike the funeral scene where Kirk insults Spock one last time and is just Geordi, at this meeting that they're having, Geordi says the test to figure out if they're alive is, let's threaten their lives and see how they react, which is a terrible test. That's got to be against Federation regulations, because I'm not going to test. I mean, that is just the worst. That's torture.
I mean, Possum, that's their number one defense mechanism, is play dead. And I think with bears, that's what you're supposed to do, is play dead, or make yourself look like a bigger bear. There's a lot of things, but anyway. But that doesn't seem to make sense to me.
It only feels okay because the exocomps outsmart the test. Mm-hmm. If the exocomps did not outsmart the test and they came out like almost panicky, I think it would play very differently and feel very cruel.
I don't understand why she's surprised, because she's like, these things were designed to analyze. So like immediately it's like, okay, so these guys are going to look at something and fix it and improve it. And I thought, this is going to lead to trouble. And she was just like, no, they just fix. And I guess maybe this gets to the crux of the episode, or not the crux of the episode, but for her, which is, these are just machines and they fix other machines. She's got a Star Wars universe mentality about droids and machines.
Well, I think the allegory of all this, and this is why that underground circuit thing made me wince a bit. I mean, they really are touching on slavery. And the idea is that she was, I mean, there were actually some really clever things going on in the way that they represented this. She was very affectionate about it at the beginning. This is her proud accomplishment. Look at these things. I can look what they do. We can use this to help, because they were convenient. They were there to help her. And the minute she starts to be inconvenienced, they were careful to give her a scene where she mentioned, I will do anything. Yeah. It almost felt like they were going a little different way there. It was almost like it was flirtatious or something, but no, it was just, this is just some, the engineers talking about what they want to do. And this is my ambition. Now, these things, no, they're not. No, this is just nothing. These are subhuman things. They aren't actually sentient. let's keep moving. I don't know. These are the same kinds of arguments they were having, around abolition, of course. So.
Yeah. No, I absolutely see that parallel. I wouldn't say I saw it while I was watching it, but as you bring it up, I can see what you're saying.
The other clever thing about it, I'm sorry, I forgot to work this in. The fact that they are so, tiny and expressionless, and they do seem like just little bots, like little balls of nothing. And it does make it feel a little bit ridiculous. And I think that's kind of the point. You want to be in that perspective, to put the audience in that perspective, looking at this thing, you're going, what do you care about this? This isn't really a person. And
it would have had to have been tempting to make the movements and stuff cutesy, and they didn't do that.
Right. Yeah. Or make them more humanoid, or make them anything to make you, because Data, and they touched on that too. Mm-hmm. She can obviously say, well, yeah, of course, Data's different because he looks like a person.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. I mentioned earlier that the current world, or current day, or current time in the universe, that the exocomps remind me of. So my first job out of college, really the same job I have now, I learned about a pig, and what that is a electronic device that looks kind of like the exocomps. Actually, there are dumb pigs and smart pigs, and dumb pigs you put in like a gas or oil pipe, and it goes through. Like a dumb pig will just go through and push out gas that's in there that shouldn't be there, and let you know where cracks are and that kind of stuff. And then a smart pig is more like the exocomp, and it's analyzing and giving you more accurate data, and maybe plugging holes while it's going at it. So it looked just like it. And then the other thing is those three things it had on top, the two on the side, on each side, not in the middle, looked like pig's ears to me. So
interesting.
I was like, wow, that's on the money. And then, because they mentioned microfracture, and I was like, yeah, that's exactly what pigs do in these pipelines. They find they find all fractures, but microfracture. If there's a big fracture, you don't need a pig to go down. So it's looking for small fractures. And the other thing was when they said, why are you trying to anthropomorphize this thing?
You almost had it.
It's anthropomorphize? Is that
yes?
Okay, I felt like I had another syllable. Anthropomorphize. I wrote it down right. I said it wrong, and I'm just like, they're talking about a pig. They're literally talking about that's what a pig. The pig I'm talking about, the mechanical device. They're like, yeah, we're going to do that with this device. It's a pig, and that also comes from the fact that they were putting it in the pipe. It also cleans the pipes. To make sure there's no debris and all that kind of stuff.
So did you find any sort of confirmation that this was actually that? Or, it sounds like
I didn't find anything, but...
It sounds like you're familiar enough with it to see that might have actually happened.
If it's not about those, I'd be surprised. And I'm saying gas and oil, I think you would find it for water and sewer pipes too, some version of this. But
I'm on the Wikipedia page for pigging, and they talk about the pigs that you're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
So it says not to be confused with pegging.
You probably would not want to confuse anything.
I can see the parallel if you're going into a pipe. Never mind. It doesn't look like an exocomp, was my point of the pictures they show. But it looks like there's a number of different designs for different purposes.
Yeah.
It does not say on this Wikipedia page when it was invented, but I would assume by the look of them that they've been around longer than this episode was.
Yes.
The Exo saw through the experiment, which was my assumption as soon as it came back out, because I'm like, if they're setting these things up, they're not going to fail such an easy test. Like it must be smarter than them. It bothers me a little bit that it took them 34 iterations of the test and Data stopping to talk to Dr. Crusher to realize that they outsmarted the test. I feel like that's something they should have been testing for and checking for anyway.
Right.
Like, it didn't blow up, but let's see. We noticed that it did this other task to shut down the test.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's as if they didn't program it well enough to simulate the explosion to indicate that's just like a bad testing procedure.
I thought it was a simulation though. For a second, I thought they were actually going to try to kill it and see if it defended itself.
Exactly. So it didn't make any sense that they did the countdown. And I was expecting them to say, "Oh, it didn't blow up," so they must have stopped it. But no, so shouldn't there have been some sort of virtual indication that the explosion had happened, or I don't know. At least I think to make it less confusing for our benefit, at least. But because it sounded like what Data said was that the it was as if the exocomp just let it happen and didn't care because it knew it was fake. And then eventually, it's sort of like, hey, by the way, look at this thing I figured out. I'm figuring out this must be a problem with the program, so I'm going to fix it. That was a very clever thing to do, but at the same time, it was still a little bit confusing as far as that's probably the point, though, wasn't it?
I guess that's where I thought it was a little uneven and not as clear as it could have been. The next scene, we have the transporter room, and we meet the new transporter chief that replaced O'Brien, Transporter Chief Kelso, played by Jay Downing, who will only be in this single episode. So I don't know if we're going back to like the chief engineer in the first season where chief engineers only guest starred once or twice. I don't think, and I could be wrong because I don't think I've seen much of these last 2 seasons, but I don't think they ever really replace O'Brien. I think we're just going to get a random guest star when they need somebody in there. And we've had other people man the transporter before. Sure. But for a second, I thought Kelso was our new transporter chief. I'm a little disappointed they did not have a replacement.
Well, they're probably just killing them off screen.
They're like Spinal Tap drummers.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jay Downing is best known for The Little Things, McFarlane USA, Defense Play, and like I said, this was his only Trek credit. So, no Seinfeld. So, yeah. So, Dr. Fowler-Roland, to like save her thing, sabotages the exocomp, so Data sabotages the Enterprise. I mean, I get it's his personal belief and that whole argument that he has with Riker there, but at the same time, I felt like he should have had that argument before he sabotaged the Enterprise, not after.
Yeah.
See, it's hard to. I mean, the words. I don't know if I would use sabotage in either case here.
Oh, you just said sabotage.
I think they said it in the episode, didn't they?
Well, I mean, let me back up here for as far as the Doctor is concerned. She's just sort of like clipping their wings or kind of like putting like a muzzle on them. So at the beginning, what Stephen was saying about thinking that the exocomp had tried to kill itself, it was actually sort of like taking off its control collar in a sense, or saying, you can't talk to me right now, or kind of plugging its ears in essence. Mm-hmm. But from her perspective, this is just like a broken malfunction thing. It's not broken. And then like turned itself back on when it realized it was safe. Or re-enable the command thing so it wouldn't be scrapped or whatever. It was just fine. However, when she was arguing about their sentience, she did make reference to an incident, which it would have been interesting if they could have followed up on that. But I guess maybe we're left to infer something from that, where one flew into the reactor core or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember that. I don't remember if that was the exact thing that had happened. But so we see by the end of the episode, to jump ahead, that one did actually sacrifice itself to save the other two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's some sort of sense of nobility there.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's part of this scene that we're talking about with the sabotaging is, they offered an alternate path, and then when they did that alternate path, they sacrificed one.
Yeah, but eventually, I mean, before we even get to that, so she decides, here's the slavery thing comes in again. She's decided to take away their choice at this point. You have to listen to me no matter what. You can't leave. Go do this thing. Your lives aren't worth as much as this. Mm-hmm. To go back to Data's actions earlier, which you were bothered you, and rightfully so. It seemed a little odd at first when he just went straight to her and said, "Hey, don't do this." That's the urgency there. This is what a human would do. This is the situation for what he believes. This is an urgent situation. It would require these actions under these circumstances. And again, for the audience's benefit, they made it seem ridiculous. And I think that's, I'm actually liking this more as I describe it. It's just, it would have seemed too easy in many other situations. And it took me a while to get there, but yeah, it did seem just odd. Why would you do it for this? Why would you sacrifice these lives for this? And I think they justified it eventually, but yeah.
To Jimmy's point, and I think your point undercuts what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, Keith.
No,
because I think your point is well made. I thought, is this the time for a philosophical debate? You just said we have 43 minutes. We do not have time to have this debate. Couldn't we have had this earlier? And then they get into it, and I was like, well, yeah, just give them the choice. And I thought Data was going to say, let them make the choice, but he doesn't. And finally, Riker gets to be the guy who's like, well, how about we give them the choice and see if they actually want to go over there? Which does make sense, but I thought they were they're like at the beginning of this debate, not at the end. So yeah, they got there.
I was looking at Goof's on IMDb, and it says Data claims he is unique. but he's apparently forgotten about his brother Lore.
Who's dead right now, as far as he knows, right? I mean,
yeah, but that doesn't mean he's unique. I mean, just because they took him apart and left him in space or whatever, I don't remember if that's.
You are not a snowflake, Data. You are not special.
Yeah, not to mention B4, but he doesn't know about B4 yet.
We got another scheduled from Picard. Always,
yes,
always enjoy that.
And to make it so,
yes. And then this shows where Faleron is coming from, because she reacts like I do when the exocomp busts out and comes out. It's like, I'm not doing that or whatever. She's like, what's the matter with this thing? And I'm like, I've said that to so many inanimate devices. When they come to life, I'm going to be on the top of the list of like, this guy's out. He is the top of our list, except they're not going to kill me. They'll bleed me out as long as they can. I'm pretty confident about that.
You're going to be a battery.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. That's exactly what I'll be.
It's the Matrix.
Yep.
Data asked what is life. All I could think of was the George Harrison song, which you might recognize from those few notes that I can't say anymore. From it's a Big in Goodfellas. Particle fountain. That seemed like a weird thing to describe that. I was trying to think of.
I'm sorry. What was? Oh, particle fountain.
What made that thing a particle fountain? Did it had particles coming out like a fountain pen? It was shaped like a fountain pen.
That's a great question.
They were trying to get minerals, I think, from the planet easier, find them better, drill easier, something like that. I thought.
Okay, I mean,
which is another reason I thought they were like pigs. I thought that was another illusion.
No, that you might be. That sounds even more compelling. From the description, though. I mean, from that name, I would imagine that it's like a water fountain. This is just something they can use to drink from it easier, essentially.
Did any of you notice that the directing seemed different this week? Like there were definitely some shots that felt different than what we usually see.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
That had me going to look to see who the director was. Not a first-time director, but one of the best directors, Mr. Jonathan Frakes, directed this. So Riker wasn't in this episode a lot. That's why.
Yeah, that reminded me when you were talking about some good uses of Beverly in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
I had that kind of feeling about. I mean, that added to my feeling that this was a well-written or a nice episode, because it didn't feel like it was necessarily like. I mean, it started off feeling like, oh, this is going to be an ensemble. Oh, wait, this is going to be Geordi. No, this is going to be a Data. No, this is going to be it kind of. It didn't feel like they were wasting anybody necessarily.
Yeah,
they found good uses for them. It would have been nice to have some more Worf or whatever, but they didn't force them in too much. It was just like some good flavor here and there. Where was Troy? It just occurred.
We saw her at the meeting, that I had, but not much.
Do you think there was a reason for that?
I don't know. There's a lot of actors to get around to.
Yeah. She got to say the one line about, well, why don't you believe Data? That it's a life. I think that.
Well, I mean, do you think she was like filming a movie or something, or she had some sick leave?
No, I don't think Rita Sirtis was filming a movie.
Wow, that reaction!
I'm sorry, I like Rita Sirtis, but I don't think she was in such high demand for films that they had to rearrange her shooting schedule.
Or something, maybe she had a doctor's appointment. I don't know.
That's what I was gonna.
I think sometimes some of the leads just aren't in the episode that much. It happens all the time. Yeah. Alternate episodes, I guess I've got two, but they're both inferior to what we saw. One is treat this like an after-school special where the exocomp has the voice of a child.
Oh God!
But
two
could be Data falls in love with the exocomp.
That's a good one.
Actually, that's not bad. Again, that goes to the they weren't taking the easy way out and making them too anthropomorphified. Oh, I did it myself.
If the exocomp was like the one in Lower Decks, they could definitely have had a romance.
Or the Planet Express ship when they gave it a voice for the Bender thing.
Yeah, I mentioned that I thought it was going to be an evil AI, and then I thought, I thought it was the mopey sad AI because I thought it killed itself. So what I want to see is the party bot. I want to see the party exocomp who's just like a frat boy in space, but it's an exocomp.
Lower Decks season 3.
There we go.
I want to see the Mirror Universe exocomp with the goatee.
Did they do that in Lower Decks?
No.
Okay. That would be. Oh my God. That would be so good.
It would just be great if nobody comments on it, but it has a goatee. Let's get to the rankings. Who was your annoyance in this episode?
I think it ended up being the doctor eventually.
Yeah.
The guest doctor. Yeah.
Yep.
Just
Dr. Farallon?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I was so with her for quite a bit. And then, there's like, well, I'm being a little irritable because of blah, blah, blah. Yeah, sure. That's understandable. But then, just as soon as it was inconvenient for her, what are you talking about? How is that possible? I made this AI thing. It can't possibly have sentience.
I will say, I think her character was consistently written in that she talked about early on how she was always too impatient and skipping steps and just trying to get her end goal. So the fact that the exocomp's got in the way of the end goal, of course she's going to not even stop to consider them. Also my annoyance, we're unanimous, but that I do think her character was authentic. I don't have a complaint about the way her character was performed or written. Who do you want to have a drink with?
Same person.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
As I said, I liked her at the beginning of the episode.
Okay.
And especially the whole the way they leaned into that science talk with Data, that was a lot of fun.
I mean, she's smart and ambitious, and you have to admire the ambition. If people are trying to hold her back, and she perseveres anyway. She persists, as Elizabeth Warren says. I just think she also needs to have consideration for what she's doing and not just blindly push ahead.
And that would make for good conversation. So, yeah.
Yeah, and she always rushes through steps. So, yeah.
Are you?
I don't have to say
You wouldn't get very far in that conversation before she's moving on to the sex, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
You did.
Although her and Jordy had that nice tea.
Yeah. My drink would be the exocomp number 2. I'm calling him number 2 because I imagine in my mind, exocomp number 1 is the one who sacrificed himself or their self. And then I didn't think about it until just now. Exocomp number 2 probably becomes the party bot that I wanted in the auction episode after it hangs out with me for a couple of weeks.
This is a little bit superficial, but I never would have a drink with Crusher more. I mean, the poker, I felt she got a raw deal, but when she's like doing battle with Worf in the holodeck, I want to hear about it and talk to her and hang out with her. So I'm going to have a drink with Crusher. First time this season I've had a drink with her. But
to that point, I'll go back to Fashion It So one more time. They had a picture of her that said, this hair goes to 11. So, yeah, she was on point in this episode.
Yeah.
Also about Crusher, Fashion It So has the picture of her talking to Data, and she's still in her, I keep calling it Tai Chi or whatever. But this is their alternate episode. Bev looks like she's a deadly assassin getting ready to strangle someone with her belt, but explaining to her target exactly how she's going to kill them before she does it, which is to say, I love this look. So, yeah. I'm just supporting. I mean, there's never a bad reason to drink Crusher, but get a drink with Crusher. But this episode, she went above and beyond.
That's a good choice.
I would have been heartbroken had she had to dye her hair brown. I mean, I'd still have a drink with her, but she has such lovely red hair.
My boy,
and honestly, now that she's older, it's more like a strawberry blonde, like as it goes like light blonde or gray, and it still looks fantastic.
My boy, Exocomp 2 is going to be trying to get all in on that.
Probably. Ranking the episode, let's start in the middle. Man of the People, better or worse?
Better.
Agreed.
I agree.
But that is a fistful of datas.
Better. Yeah. If I had more time, I might do more bits here, but no, I think it's better.
I agree.
I'm a little bit torn, but not so torn that I need to stand in your way. So let's keep going up then.
No, it's a little close. I mean, I think if I'd been closer to Fistful of Datas, if we'd watched it more recently, I might have gone. Yeah.
I mean, it was the most recent episode. It was last week's episode.
Yep, not enough for me. That's how it works. It's all gone.
Now, the reason I started where I started is I thought it was comparable to a Fistful of Datas. I thought it was about the same level. I'll let it edge it out. Above that is True Q. I'd go below that. That's why I started where I started. I wasn't sure about a Fistful of Datas above or below, but thought it was above Man of the People, below True Q for sure.
Yeah, and really, Fistful of Datas. If I thought about it too much longer, that was just like a gut reaction. So yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah, I think it's under True Q.
Yeah,
perfect. Then I'm very happy where it is. It's It's number 4 of 9. Not 7 of 9, Keith. You screwed it all up. Well, it was Keith's fault and not all 3 of us ranking it.
Something is 7 of 9 right now.
7 of 9 right now is Rascals.
No, she is a rascal.
I was just going to say that. You beat me to it. Next week, Chain of Command Part 1. So I guess there's a Part 2. Picard is replaced as Captain of the Enterprise so that he, Lieutenant Worf, and Dr. Crusher can go on a top secret mission in Cardassian space.
Huh.
Meanwhile, his replacement, Captain Jellicoe, meets his new command with some resistance from the crew. So I think this is like Shelby Part 2. When you bring in a new senior officer, the crew's not thrilled about it. But Picard and Crusher and Worf go on this mission. And for all the memes that Steven has seen and understood, we're finally going to get the "there are 4 lights" reference.
Oh, okay. All right.
I don't know if it's Part 1 or Part 2, but it's in this 2-parter. We're going to get the 4 lights.
All right.
So that wasn't the Lights of Zatar? Is that what am I?
Lights of Zatar was the original series.
Oh my God.
We hate.
Wow. For some reason, I thought we had already seen the 4 lights episode because we talked about it enough to see.
No.
This is why I don't like spoilers.
You'll forget by the time you watch it. It's a whole week away, and we know you don't remember things week to week.
I'm going to be so mad because you'll be all right. I guess I win either way. If I don't forget, I get to. Oh, I got you, Jimmy. Told you so. If I forget, whatever. Anyway,
until then, live long
and analyze and adapt
and enjoy the quality of life. That's what I call the quality of no. In life,
that's what I call life.
Yeah,
Volume 6.
In life, is there no quality? No.
For my life is hollow, and I have touched the sky.
Of all the Keiths I've ever known, Keith Jackson, you are the most human.
Let's not go too far.
And Prosper. Yeah. Did somebody say and Prosper? I did. Okay.
Did you?
I did.
They got lost. I forgot already. It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?